This is a highway. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Monday, June 17th, 2024 council meeting. Before we begin, Councillor Donaldson, can you read the territorial acknowledgement for us?
Sure, thank you. Good evening. We acknowledge the Shiano and South First Nations on the homelands which we all work. This acknowledgement is one small part of supporting Indigenous communities as we continue to listen, learn, and support truth and reconciliation.
Thank you. We have the agenda before you. We have an additional supplemental information from the Pinks. So with that, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have a presentation this evening. I'd like to invite Mr. Matt Ashton from Parry Bay Sheep Farm to present Parry Bay Sheep Farm, Conservation and Livestock Farming. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Matt Ashton, 4335 Lindholm Road, based out of Parry Bay Sheep Farm. I've been a full-time employee on the farm for a year and a half now.
Would it be okay if you use the microphone?
Okay.
Podium? Would that be okay?
At the...
Yeah, the podium. That way we can capture it for the people at home.
Oh, sure. Okay. Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the time to do a presentation today. I understand there's a lot on the agenda, so thank you for the time. Doing this presentation today because the wild predator situation has become quite significant in the last couple of years, and it would be a shame if something were to happen to livestock farming in Metchosin without everyone being aware before consequences did happen. So I will get into it. If I can leave people with one takeaway tonight, it's that we have a very healthy population of cougars on the island. It's very good for cougars to be up in Leechtown area. That's a good thing. We can agree that it would not be a good thing for cougars to be in Colwood residential areas. And Metchosin is a buffer land in between those two places, and so it only seems appropriate to manage their population here in Metchosin.
Coffee cup?
You go ahead. Okay, you can just continue presenting and I'll leave the slide.
Next, please. So this is, okay, good, thank you. Okay, so the goals of this presentation: to describe the magnitude of the current cougar situation. Second, to warn of the consequences if livestock farming becomes unsustainable. 3, to detail what cougar strategies have been attempted and what strategies are not feasible. And 4, to make the case for conservation officer service policy change that would provide more timely and effective assistance to us livestock farmers when kills do happen. So this is just to say that it's not about farmers being right and others being wrong. The ideal situation is that all stakeholders involved are collaborating and have open communication between them. Everyone has a role to play, and the most ideal thing is that we have good faith communication between us. I do worry that sometimes, of course, the wildlife activists do make valid points, but without the context or experience from farmers, it can sometimes sound like it is the farmers to blame for their negligence, or at least it's farmers' negligence that leaves cougars being killed, and I'm here to say that that is not the case. Parry Bay Sheep Farm accounts for the vast majority of sheep in town. There are lots of other farmers and other sheep in town. It's just that Parry Bay does about something over 1,300 head of sheep. So Parry Bay Farm is a major agriculture business in Metchosin. With this, because of the scale of Parry Bay Sheep Farm, we are able to own and operate the abattoir in town. For those who don't know, an abattoir is a slaughterhouse. And so because Parry Bay is the size that it is and that it can operate a slaughterhouse, that provides a lot of benefits to hobby farmers and other farmers in town, enabling them to do their own sheep and get them processed locally. If Parry Bay were to shut down or have to reduce its scale to lose the slaughterhouse, there's not an alternative for hobby farmers to send their sheep elsewhere. There are other slaughterhouses on the island, but it's not as simple as sending the thousands of animals that we currently do. The other plants could not handle our volume. We do, I think, the highest volume of sheep in the entire province for a provincial slaughterhouse. That is for sheep specifically. And so even if they could bring them to the mainland, if they could find places to do them, the logistics would be very difficult, and people would likely find it too difficult to do sheep themselves in Metchosin and on the South Island. So the magnitude of the current predator situation is that last year we lost 61, not just Parry Bay, but in Metchosin, 61 livestock were lost to cougars. 50 of those were our business's sheep. This year, 30 livestock in Metchosin have been lost. 25 of those have been ours. And for note, 8, we have sheep elsewhere outside of Metchosin. We're losing them there as well. Parry Bay Sheep Farm is Metchosin's largest scale agricultural business and major supporter of keeping agriculture viable and sustainable in Metchosin. It's good to have a diversity of agriculture business in town. The diversity of agriculture makes agriculture robust, or the diversity makes it a more robust sector. And the farm employees that work here, for one, we're able to employ 4 full-time employees, 5 part-time employees, volunteers, vet students. We have an adult day program of adults with special needs that come in and use the farm for that service. And just in general, John and Lorraine are extremely willing to help other farmers in town. Having, just for example, the 4 full-time employees, we provide other services to other farms in town as well, and so we do a lot to support agriculture in general, even though we're just one. It's not all about us, but we are the largest player, and we do provide a lot. So the Parry Bay Sheep Farm model is that to be able to have the large sheep farm that we do, it relies on free pasture grazing made possible through farm tax status. It would not be profitable. It would not be a profitable business to not be able to put the sheep out on pasture. And without the ability to put them on pasture, you could not have a sheep farm at this scale. And to not have a sheep farm at this scale, you're not able to do other things like perhaps the abattoir. Consequences of having a large-scale sheep farm in Metchosin, just because of how Metchosin is that you have many disconnected pastures. You have varied sized flocks on each of those pastures. and a great total length of perimeter fences for each of those pastures. This isn't an exact, like these aren't exact pastures. This is gives you a general idea. I haven't named out every individual private person who has some of our sheep, but there are many more than this, but this gives you an idea of how the model looks in town. Before getting into other issues of the wild predators, currently it really is a testament to success that there are both many sheep and many cougars and bears in Metchosin. This doesn't have to be a sad story or an end to anything. Right now we have a lot of sheep and a lot of wildlife. It's just that this balance, the trend that is happening with wild predator kills of livestock, the trend does need to change or there will be consequences, but this does not have to be a failure already. For many years, farmers have been willing to concede a limited number of livestock. It is true when activists say it's not the cougar's fault when they attack a sheep. We understand that, and a limited number is reasonable, as I described Metchosin being a buffer zone between the wild and the urban centers of Colwood and such. Conceding a limited number of livestock is something we're willing to do. 60 is very much not a limited number. 60 becomes very significant. Even 30 this year is very significant to the business. We do receive some compensation back from conservation officers for the kills if we identify them, but it does take a lot of labor to go search for the dead lambs, to identify that it was done by a cougar. It's some money back, but it's not enough to run a business on. So for the record, Vancouver Island has the highest density population of cougars in the whole world. Concentration here is the highest. They are very much not an endangered species here. There was back in the 1950s, it was in the 1960s that it ended. The government used to give a bounty for shooting them. They've stopped doing that. The population has come back to be the highest in the world. So they're not endangered, they're the highest in the world. And these are just videos to show for reference. You can legally go out and hunt both cougar and bear on the island. It is not a issue of them being endangered. It is. This is to say that it's their population. We have a choice to make. This would be a very different conversation if they were an endangered species. They are not. And so that's to say that we're looking for help in managing their population, and by no means are we looking to eradicate them. They are welcome to be in Metchosin, but the nuance here is that not all cougars kill livestock. Some cougars kill livestock, and some of those cougars kill a lot of livestock. And so it comes down to the individual animal. It's not a widespread need to cull and eradicate all of them. It comes as an individual animal basis. And so when we ask for help from conservation for timely and effective assistance in managing the population, it comes to individual problematic cougars, not that we want to completely eradicate them. So there has been talk before about the common strategies that people in Metchosin can consider in order to coexist with cougars. They are all legitimate strategies, but sometimes when they get proposed, it leaves the public with the idea that these strategies exist and perhaps the cougar problem is then due to the ignorance of the farmers. And I'm here to say that the farmers here have been farming lamb for over 30 years. All the strategies that have been proposed have been attempted, considered, evaluated. Some are in place and some are just deemed unfeasible. So for example, we have for fences, we have 10 miles of total fence. It's proposed you can use electric fences to keep the cougars out. Now this picture on the right here is on Bennett Road. It is an electric fence, and I think last year we had something 20 or 30 lamb killed there by a cougar. That cougar happened to be a mother with cubs, and we assumed that they were using them as training for the cubs. So again, it's an individual. It wasn't just a hungry cougar. It was a mother who learned that she could use this set of sheep as training for her cubs, and we lost a ridiculous amount at this pasture, and it had a very large effect. So, but this is an electric fence, and it didn't stop her and her cubs from getting our lamb. And there's another idea that you could have tall non-electric fences, a page wire, so you could have them 8 or 9, 10 feet up, and that would be another alternative. There are reports in town of bear climbing those fences, and we know that cougars can definitely get up and around them too. There's an idea that if you had a fence that was visibility blocking, then the cougar would not be able to know that there's sheep behind it. But as I showed from the previous slide, all the different pastures that we had, if we were to build fences that you couldn't see past on every one of those pastures to protect all those sheep, I can't even imagine what the cost would be, but it definitely wouldn't be feasible for the business. And lastly here too, I took this photo just on, this past Friday. And it's just, there's deer out in the field. There's often wildlife in our pastures and using our pastures as wildlife corridors. Say there was a perfect solution to block off the cougars from our lamb. It's not necessarily an ideal solution. Then what if we did that, and then the cougars that currently have a wildlife corridor to get to the ocean, to lick salty rocks or whatever it is they like to do down there. Let's say we did that, and then they don't have this corridor any longer. So it wouldn't necessarily be a solution, it'd just be a different trade-off, and I would propose not a better one. Another solution that's proposed is using dogs to protect against cougars, which does work when you can use dogs, or we assume it would. On different pastures that are more remote outside of Metchosin, we are considering using dogs, but they're possible there because they're very remote pastures that are not in more rural areas than Metchosin. If we were to put dogs on pasture in Metchosin, it'd be quite the nuisance. It'd be a safety risk because the dogs would see passerbys and other dogs and other animals as threats and be looking to attack them, and be barking at everyone who's going, like on this pasture, the galloping goose is just behind that. If we had guard dogs, there's no reason that they wouldn't be trying to attack everyone on the trail and barking at them. So it just wouldn't be practical. Many people suggest donkeys or burros. We do have donkeys. We do not have confidence in the donkeys. They're just not very. We've had them out on pasture before with the lamb, and lamb have still been taken. We have the donkeys, and sometimes we put them out with the sheep, but we don't make a great effort about it because they don't seem very effective. There's also the idea of bringing the sheep inside a barn at night. As I showed by the way that Metchosin is set up to have, the only way you can have a large sheep farm in Metchosin is to use the mini pasture system that we have going. And if you were to build a barn on each of those pastures, we definitely do not have the money for that. That would be a very high cost. And the land that we put these sheep on, the business does not own that land. That is leased land. And so it would be to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a structure on someone else's property is just not practical. And even if we did, last year and this year, we've had cougar attacks on our sheep that have happened in broad daylight. And so being able to bring the animals in at night could help some if it were even to be practical, but it wouldn't be the silver bullet solution as sometimes proposed. As one interesting example too, I'm currently supervising sheep at a property in the Highlands. I'm living in the barn where the sheep can come into. The sheep were in that barn with me, and a bear still in broad daylight came in to attack the sheep as I was in my structure beside my sheep. And I had to chase the bear away by yelling at it. So it was not, I would have thought it would be deterred, and they were doing a lot for them, but it was 10 seconds away from a bear eating sheep even then. So just, in some cases it may work, but this is just from the experience of our farm on the ground in town here. So my conclusion is that Metchosin's largest sheep farm is already significantly downsizing due to wild predators and is at risk of ending if the current trend is not improved. We have reduced our flock size by 30% since last year, and so the trend is not going in a good direction. And if this keeps up, it could be the downfall of this farm. And by losing the largest sheep farm in town, it would have major effects on local hobby livestock farmers and agriculture in town in general. For example, losing the abattoir would have serious cascade effects, and even things like our manure gets spread on vegetable farmers' fields, as one simple example. So there's lots of reason to value having this large sheep farm in town. So livestock farmers are asking for primarily more timely and effective assistance from the Conservation Officer Service. Also understanding from activists that we have attempted their proposed solutions and that there are ultimate limitations of the common strategies that they propose. For the record, very much happy to work with wildlife activists. It is a shame when they are bringing up examples of things that the farmers in town, who are very much welcome to being contacted and having a conversation and have been doing it for many decades in town here. It's a shame when the activists don't tap into the information that the farmers are willing to provide. And lastly, just support from council and the community at large to keep sheep and agriculture a part of Metchosin's culture. Which I think is important. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind, I will turn this to council. Does anybody have any questions for Matt? Thank you for the presentation. Councillor Gray.
Matt, thanks so much. That's really informative. Tell me, are bears as big a problem as cougars, or are we focused? I seem to recall there was a real tough time with bears, that maybe it was more than a few years ago.
No, thank you. I forgot to mention that. In the last 2 years, it's been particularly a cougar issue. In the past, it has been more a bear issue. I don't know why, but for 2 years, it's only been a cougar. In the past, it's been a bear issue too.
And then through the chair, is the bear, were the conservation officers responding differently for the bears?
It was also a problem at that time, but I don't think the numbers were as significant as we're seeing in the past too for cougars. But there was also an issue.
Thank you. And then finally, do you have numbers for 2021 or 2022? Like, has this been just a shock on it occurred, or was this a gradual build-up? Or I'm just curious, not that it's...
From my memory, I don't have the numbers with me, but I believe it was less. This is an upcoming trend where we've had especially bad years, and that's why, again, we're not looking to eradicate the cougars. We have been coexisting with them for a while, and when the kills are at a more manageable, or just when there's less kills, we're willing to tolerate that. When they get into what the numbers they have been for the past 2 years, we really need the assistance, and without that assistance, there are consequences.
Thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and Matt, thank you for your presentation. The problem seems to be around lambing. How is it now that the animals are a little older, or when is the peak and when does it seem to fall off in terms of predation?
We have the most animals out on pasture during lambing. During the other times of the season, we bring the mums into the barn, and so it's not only that we have more animals out during lambing, but they're out and more vulnerable during lambing. The cougar actually hasn't. Well, we've had major issues with the cougar in the Highlands for the last month. I don't know if it's the Metchosin cougar walked over to the Highlands and started killing them there, or what it is exactly, but since the 25 that we lost in March and April, There hasn't been another one since then, knock on wood,
Okay.
but
To-
just so far.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Shukin, or Donaldson, sorry.
Thank you, Matt, for your presentation. It was very thorough. As a farmer, we did actually have bear kills a couple years ago, and it was in July, just before going to market with our lambs. But it also took down our ewes, our breeding ewes, and close by neighbors, farmers as well. So it's not just a specific time, but like Matt's saying, they are out on pasture. They also graze 24/7, so keeping them indoors is not always practical. The abattoir does do a lot of great work. The employees also work on, the farmers kind of share, so there's haying going on right now, so they're doing abattoir a couple days a week. They're out on the hay field. So there would be a ripple effect if we didn't have all these different farms. I think everybody is working together, so I appreciate the information you've given us. There's a lot more that you presented tonight than I had thought, so thanks for the work. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have public participation. We have 4 minutes per person. If you wish to speak at mic, you can tell us your name and your street number. And we have a maximum time to 45 minutes, so about 10 after 8 or so.
Jim McPherson, Eagle Tree Place. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have some observations regarding the 2023 draft annual report and the SOFI report that accompanied it. What struck me about the 2023 draft report is the description of priorities for 2024. The priorities for this year do not include addressing the accessibility issues, the works of the Capital West Accessibility Advisory Committee, and the potential expansion of community engagement. The priorities also do not include addressing housing issues raised by the province. There is also no priority attached to getting feedback on the use of the Community Development Fund. All of this begs the question for me as to just what are the priorities attached to when dealing with BC government directives. The state of financial information, which accompanies the annual report, reveals some information which I'm sure the public would be interested in learning about. First, SOFI indicates that there are no severance agreements in 2023, but illustrates, for example, that Sue Lynn's severance package will be included next year. Second, the SOFI report documents salaries paid to senior employees. Remuneration to each of all 7 employees exceeding $80,000 a year, with 3 paid in excess of $100,000 and 1 paid more than $150,000. I realize that wages paid must be competitive, but I also understand that there are new hires in the offing. Metchosin has a small tax base, and it has limited capacity to absorb the salaries of new hires. I am concerned that staff levels elevated to accommodate more and more optional services are becoming unsustainable. Finally, the SOFI report makes reference to the district being named as defendant in lawsuits. I appreciate that details cannot be discussed in public, but the district can tell us how many lawsuits there are, what the lawsuits have been about, for example, I think for bylaw infractions, how the district is responding to the suits, and whether the district has any contingency plans in place to address worst-case scenarios that may lead to increases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne Cote, 4499 Leafield Road. I'm back again. So when our proposal was sent back to staff in March for more information, we weren't exactly sure what to expect. After about a month, we received an email asking if we wanted to put a pause on our application without any reason why. After a phone call, we learned that the planner was moving on, so we decided to do some research on our own. I accessed the District of Metchosin minute archives on the website and read through all the council and committee meeting minutes from 2006 forward and made a few notes. I also reread the official community plan in great detail. In all that reading, I found 3 decisions I wanted to discuss or address. The rezoning of 1464 Kangaroo Road from an upland rural split zone to all rural zoning illustrates that what we are requesting has occurred. Yes, that rezoning complied with the OCP zone map, while ours does not. However, I believe the OCP mapping of our property is a little out of place. The entire south side of Leafield Road is zoned rural, except for our property, the one at the very end of a dead-end road. There have been mapping changes due to errors, such as the changes at 1425 Todd Lane, which I believe could be applied in this situation. In addition, the subdivision of 1464 Kangaroo Road produced an undersized rural lot, 86% of the required size. Our original proposal would have produced 2 rural lots at 96% of the required size, but was rejected outright at the planner's desk. The OCP states that rural residential 2 lots are interspersed with larger rural holdings. We border a large ALR section and with the rural properties to the east behind us. It also states that the extent of existing RR2 development not be substantially expanded. Well, I don't know that one RR2 lot indicates substantial expansion. After the development permit at 1464 Kangaroo Road was passed, was there an increase in applications in Metchosin to do the same? I couldn't find any evidence of that in the 18 years of minutes that I read through. In our latest submission, we have proposed covenants on the 2 properties in favor of Metchosin, preventing any construction of secondary suites for 25 years, to assure people that we do not and will not be planning anything more than 1 house on the new lot. While the OCP has approached increased housing and housing affordability through suites and detached secondary suites, this doesn't produce more taxpayers and doesn't support raising a family. The size of a detached secondary suite is also not really adequate to raise a family. We feel the rezoning and subdividing unused land is the better solution here. What is the difference in density between 2 families living on a 10-acre parcel, 50 feet apart? 1 family in a detached secondary suite, or 2 families living on a 10-acre parcel, rezoned and subdivided to 2 parcels, 500 feet apart? Well, I think the answer is 1 extra taxpayer. In the OCP, section 14.3.2, it states that within this rural context, the OCP provides a range of housing types to accommodate a range of household needs and incomes. The key objective identified in the OCP is to provide opportunity for a range of housing types, sizes, prices, and tenure consistent with maintaining a rural community. But it's limited us to a suite or detached secondary suite, which is hardly a range of choices. While we know that the OCP must be updated in 2025, waiting until then to address 1 application for change seems to be a long delay for a decision that this council could make. We've spoken to many of the residents on Leafield Road, the people who will be most directly affected by our proposal. As a small sampling of Metchosin residents, of the 28 neighbors we spoke to, 24 had no objections, 2 wanted to remain neutral, and 2 did not support our proposal.
And Cote, 4499 Leafield. We moved here many years ago, raised our kids here, watched the community fill in around us. We fixed up the house, took care of the property. We've talked about it many times. We would love to live next to a working farm. Vegetables, grain crops, cattle or sheep, even flowers or a tree farm. Instead, we live next to one of the largest landfills in Metchosin, home to a half a dozen dump trucks, tractor vehicles, a host of trailers, and other debris, all under the guise of a turf farm. good farmland being used as a commercial parking lot. Some people bought property in Metchosin and can have a farm and work the land. Some of us genuinely like the forest and bought land that is fully treed. I find it disappointing that we with the forested land should have to keep our properties exactly the same with no changes for the benefit of those that can have a farm and work the land. They can earn a living from their land while we face restrictions. We cannot even use our land to help our children, who also like the forest. I do not agree with allowing farmland to be used for industrial, commercial, or residential, unless the residential is for the workers to work the land. But there may come a time when the province puts on the big boots, takes out the big stick and turns their eyes towards Metchosin, removes the exemptions for housing requirements, and then we may look back and say, if only we allowed a little bit more controlled growth, we could have avoided any massive changes. It may be better to have growth decisions made by Metchosinites rather than a provincial appointee. The only way I feel to keep farming affordable in the future is to protect our valuable farmland and have enough taxpayers living in the forested land to shoulder the burden of costs to allow the municipality to hold the line or lessen tax increases for our farmers. Otherwise, we may price our land out of the market for new or young farmers looking in this direction. Our daughter and son-in-law and grandson are here tonight. They will stay until the crying becomes unbearable. They will head back to their 750 square foot condo in Brentwood. They could go to a 750 square foot detached secondary suite in Metchosin, but that wouldn't be much of a step forward for a young family. They are taxpayers in Central Saanich and are needing to expand to fit their family, but can't afford to buy a larger space. We do not have the money to help them. We have this unused land to make them Metchosin taxpayers. We spoke to many of our neighbors over the last few weeks, and other than support for our proposal, I heard that most people support building homes in the forested and rocky areas and sparing the agricultural farmable areas. And all acknowledge the challenge of having their children be able to live in Metchosin with larger lots and very high land values. Our children have some of the same dreams we had when we started out. Buy your own land, raise a family. You have walked our property. We do not have steep driveways. We are not encroaching on other neighbors. We are looking for our family house. We are looking for one family house, not four. Can we find a solution that helps to ease the housing crisis that still allows for some controlled growth here in Metchosin? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moira Horrigan, 3920 Metchosin Road. I came here tonight to speak in support of banning biosolids in Metchosin and try to put a stake through the CRD and its notion of continually trying to spread things around. And I would also like to support the gentleman who spoke about Parry Bay Sheep Farm and the need for an abattoir and hobby farmers. When we had cows, we could get them killed in town and cut up, put in little packages. And then the government changed the regulations and we had to ship them up island to do it. And it became easier just to get rid of the cows and have to pay for the hauling. So I hope that the council can find some way to support Parry Bay Sheep Farm. And I have done research on fences and cougars because we used to sit outside a lot. It was very nice. And then we heard a female cougar screaming over the back fence, which has changed our sitting outside in the dusk pastimes. But fences don't keep cougars out. So it's ridiculous to think that the farmers can do that by fences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric White, 4290 Metchosin Road. So I suppose there's going to be discussion about the OCP, and I think there's important things to remember. As in the purpose of the document, it states that it's not a static document, so it's meant to be changed, meant to be worked on, meant to be growing. It's an open document, so as of today kind of thing, it's your guys' decision of what the document says for the future and how it applies. The vision of it, according to 1.14, is to establish a plan that looks 20 years into the future. One thing I, strangely enough, spend more time than I should thinking about is what does Metchosin look like in the future in 20 years? A lot along the lines of who's going to be here. I know so many elderly people who they're elderly and they're in 20 years they won't be here. Many of them are losing their loved ones that have been here and they won't be here, right? So it's how are we going to keep the aging population from disappearing and leaving the land to people who don't hold the values that Metchosin holds, because say their kids don't live here, they live somewhere else, Saskatchewan, or they haven't lived here for 20 years, they'll inherit the property and maybe they'll think like, well, this is worth millions of dollars. That's going in my pocket, right? And then it's going to a developer, it's going to someone who just says like, I don't care about farming or I don't care about Metchosin's values, I just want to, do my thing out here, right? Whereas most people in the room, I suppose, are all pretty invested in Metchosin and keeping it the way it is. And if we can figure out some succession or some way to keep families involved in a long-term 20-year outlook, then I think Metchosin has a better chance of maintaining the goals of the OCP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ellen Frisch, Parry Crossroad area. I was going to speak about one thing tonight and turned into two as soon as I heard the Parry Bay Sheep Farm presentation, so I'll be quick. I'm up here tonight to support the discussion on the detached bylaw updates. I think it's a great blend of setback updates based on considering what the policy says and keeping in mind Metchosin. I think it did, or you do still have the opportunity to look at other elements, because of course embedded in that section of the bylaw is also the section that speaks to the minimum size of secondary dwelling, which right now sits at 70 square meters. And we've talked at this group about trying to align it with that VALR number of 90 square meters, which is also a common figure with other CRD members. The other item is that despite amending the setback figures, we still have the element in the bylaw that tethers the secondary dwelling to the principal residence of 15 meters, which I think you've all experienced how many variances come to council based on just that 15-meter tether, I guess I'll call it. So there is an opportunity to create principles and values associated with property siting of a secondary dwelling that doesn't necessarily tie it to a number. But now that we've got this new outside number that's changing from a 15-meter side lot setback to 3 meters in some cases, it's a pretty significant change. But if your principal dwelling is still where it is, it's not really going to impact the secondary suite. So I just wanted to raise those two opportunities to discuss those items. Lastly, the minimum parking requirement changed. Again, they're looking for flexibility, and of course they're saying you can reduce it to a minimum of 1 parking spot. Well, what we're seeing, and many have noticed now when you drive by Westmont School, there's 2 homes that are side by side there that have 7, 8, 9 cars. They're overflowing onto Metchosin Road. They're parked in the Ministry of Transportation right-of-way on the other side of the ditch. If you're in a bigger vehicle, your bumper comes very close, on that white line. It's very concerning. It doesn't seem to be enforced. So while we've got a minimum of 1 car, is there the opportunity to look at a maximum of cars? Don't know. It becomes an enforcement issue, but just asking the question. So turning our minds now to the presentation. I've known John and Lorraine for more than 25 years, fully support the sheep farm. We ourselves had sheep when we first moved here and lost our first 3 lambs to a cougar in our first year of having them. At the same time, we had a 3-year-old daughter. Our neighbor was a former CO, and we got cougar smart with our neighbor real quick. So our children were not running around at dusk in the forest, being as what he called cougar magnets. So what we did learn is that there are there are these areas of movement. We've got a big one that is on the creek that's just right on the other side of Metchosin Road that runs behind our property that is a regular wildlife corridor. It sounds like there's another one off of Bennett Road. So it wasn't clear to me. I agree electric fences don't work. I talked to John and Lorraine about moving some sheep back to our property last year, and that was the first thing he raised was we need electric, we need more than what we've got here. But the ask for me was not clear. Until a few years ago, there was only one conservation officer doing the whole South Island. When we lost our lambs, it took 4 days to respond, and they found the cougar using hounds about 1 kilometer away, chasing some goats. So what we have is not just a commercial livestock operation threat. Animals are attracted by chickens, goats, other livestock that are out there. So it's a bigger challenge for the community than just that. And then lastly, I am completely sympathetic to the situation, but based on the numbers that I heard, the loss is less than 2% or maximum of 4%, which in any operating business, you're going to have a loss in any year of some small percentage. So while I am sympathetic, a 4% loss does not seem unreasonable. But it would be great to understand what could be done through the Conservation Officer Service. It's just not clear to me. So I think more information would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
Hi there, David Shanks. I live on Dutton Road, and I came to speak about the Duke Road Trail and survey motion that had come up from last week's community planning meeting. To me, I guess I view Duke Road East and the trail that's being requested by the community as a safety issue.
It's really hard to hear.
Sorry. I view that trail as a safety issue. Is that better? So it's a narrow shoulder on the side of the road, very steep ravines in places. The pedestrians are very close to traffic. There's times where there's lots of traffic, there's big vehicles, things I think I've spoken before at probably committee meetings, not to yourselves. Lots of drivers are good. They'll move to the middle and make way space for pedestrians, but then there's cases where they're not good, and all you need is one bad driver, impatient driver, whatever, to have something bad happen. For example, we were walking in front of the bus on June 7th, and we were walking south on Duke Road around Albert Head Road to the base, and there was a vehicle about to turn left. And an impatient driver came up behind them, went out past them on the left, zoomed past, so car turning, passing, and they were walking on this side, and we're what's going on. So just an example of something that could have had a bad outcome. Some of the discussion last week, and I guess 2 occasions, has come up about a price or cost for the trail of $500,000 to $2 million. That one quite shocked me from walking with the neighbors, and Mr. Perpolkin had come around with PTASC and ourselves and Councillor Shukin, and he had looked at the part that, in our view as neighbors, we thought was the worst, and he thought if this ravine needs to be reinforced or something, even with something engineered, big concrete blocks, his estimate of that was something on the order of $100,000. So $500,000 to $2 million seemed very surprising to me, and I guess my My question or my request around those is to share sort of where those numbers came from. Did it come from someone who's experienced in building trails in Metchosin or somewhere else, some paths, trails, other things elsewhere? Sort of what's their experience, knowledge of building trails out here? And what type of trail or pathway and other improvements have they included in that? And is that the same as what the neighbors are asking for? It kind of just seems like a number that is maybe meant to inflame and scare people. That was my first reaction to it, I guess. So I guess on that piece, it's to ask for the information to be shared so we can all consider it. If it's really going to cost $500,000 or $2 million, then I'll be the first one to come and say we shouldn't build that trail and we should do something else and figure it out. Which I think Councillor Epshy had given information that you're considering to lower the speed limit, and also the proposal I'd come to a committee with last month about changing the painting on the road to make a space. I don't know how much time I have, so I'm babbling. In my view, I think the survey is needed to be able to provide info to do an effective consultation with the public. Right now, for the parts that we've looked at, the second and third part, we don't know where a trail can fit. So how can we say what we're going to build, who it's going to affect, how much it's going to cost without even knowing where we're trying to put it? So in my view, I think that survey is needed to inform the costs, the design, and the design is needed to get a grant. It is in Parks and Trails Master Plan from 2009. It was way down the list, but as identified by one of the PTASC members at a past meeting, basically every other option sort of above the priority list has already been looked at and had things put in place or deemed to be too difficult or infeasible. Interesting that has an estimated cost per 100 meters, I think, of trail, and so the ask that the community and PTASC have put forward is for about $10,000 of materials, and then volunteers and Mr. Perpalkin were going to volunteer their time to build the trail, so it's basically $10,000 for materials versus an estimated cost in 2009 dollars was about $22,000, so it seems like good value even 15 years ago, let alone with the cost increases. The last main point I had was just around the climate action plan. I noted in there it says transportation is one of the biggest CO2 contributors from Metchosin. Trails and all trails would be a way to get more people walking and biking and things like that, which is a small thing we can do to try and reduce that footprint. I noted that it was, we've seen touted in the news that it was a year old, so I would encourage you to follow your vision from that plan. Yeah. And I guess in closing, to me, it's more of a safety issue as opposed to a want. Last point I'll make is if you disagree with my view about the motion and continuing with the survey or not continuing, I would request to consider an amendment to the motion to stipulate a timing to revisit when a survey could be looked at again, or a trigger of the consultation is completed, or some other reasonable trigger to revisit the survey when at a time in the future, as opposed to just cutting it off. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leslie Clark. I'm at 3773 Duke Road. I've been a resident of Metchosin for about 27 years now, and I would like to speak in support of the Duke Road path extension, walking path extension. Yeah, I just want to do that in the spirit of community engagement that was brought up at a recent meeting. I think we need to hear about the positive aspects of this trail as well and consider it from all angles and not shut it down instantly when someone comes up with some numbers, and have a good look at it. The existing path on Duke Road has provided lots of value to many Metchosin residents for many years. Me and my family have used it, and all our neighbors that I see walking on there, and I want to just go over the value that I think that has, and how an extension could extend the value to more Duke Road, or more residents of Albert Head, and actually all Metchosin residents. First and foremost, safety. Duke is a long, winding road. with many areas that have greenery coming right up to the edge of the road. When cars come from two directions, there's really nowhere to go except to kind of get into the bush a little bit, and I've experienced that in the past. It's not pleasant. I think a speed reduction wouldn't address all the safety concerns, and from my point of view, you're still at the edge of the road with cars, you know, coming close by you. I don't think that that's the ultimate solution. I'd love to see people slow down, but I doubt posting a different speed limit will do that. And even if it did, I just don't think it's the full picture. Anyway, so safety. The existing Duke Road path is what I'm hoping would be the vision for the extension, and that's a simple gravel walk, so a hardened, tamped down gravel path with a bit of a grass verge wherever that's possible, wherever room permits, to give a little bit of space from the road, from cars passing by. I understand that there's the occasional spot where that may not be possible, and on the existing Duke there's a very small stretch. It has asphalt, and I think that's there for two reasons. One being a bit of a drainage issue as water rushes down around this bend, and the other is that it's a blind spot. And walking, there's no room for a grass verge there. And so walking along that section as cars come around the corner and can't see you is quite dangerous. Before the path was put in, well, when I walked there, it was not a good thing. So that was a very small stretch, and I don't think that's anyone's vision, is to see a sidewalk in Metchosin. It would be quite a simple structure. Anyway, that's the safety side. Secondly, I think that having that path is in line with our values of having a rural lifestyle, and the quiet enjoyment of walking along a country road should be something that's viable. And on many other roads, it does work. Duke is a long sort of corridor type road, and it makes it more difficult, but it takes you to a beautiful parkland and would give access also at the other end to the Far Hill path that takes you to Albert Head. So it would connect two parks and allow a lot of residents to stay out of their car and be able to walk or cycle to some beautiful areas in the area. And I think that that's important for us. So I think that's actually the third thing. It would link more people up with green space in an environmentally sound way. And I've heard of a couple residents who talk about the concern about attracting people to the area, and that posting that as a reason to not support the path. And I would like to suggest that we don't go there. I mean, I'm tempted. I'm on Duke, and as I watch Royal Bay develop, a little part of me would like to shut down Duke Road, because you see more people coming along, speeding along there and coming to our parks and clogging up the place, you know, but it's really not our park. It's a CRD park, and it's meant for the enjoyment of everyone, and much as I don't like the additional number of people using it, it really isn't ours. It's meant to be shared, and we should also be able to go to other parks in the area. So I don't see that as a good reason to try and contain this and not allow it. So I would like the council to consider looking further into this and not to shut down that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir Anthony Metchosin Road. I ended up with like 3 things on my list, so I wrote them down, so I'll try to be really quick. Regarding Leafield Road, I think, you know, in these cases we kind of have the luxury of looking at these by a case-by-case basis. And it's always important to consider the environmental costs, but also the human costs in these situations. You know, the worst thing that could happen is, you know, if they were being disingenuous, I highly doubt they are from what we've seen, and they're obviously being quite reasonable about providing some proof of that. The worst case scenario still is somebody ends up with a home. The best case scenario is their family ends up with a home, and I think that's something really worth considering. With Bill 44, I sort of read through the report. There's it seems like the bare minimum kind of in there, and I think this is a really important opportunity right now to legitimize many existing rental units and make them part of the tax assessment on these properties, so that there is a little more of a tax base on that. You know, I guess I'm just gonna add, it's not in my notes, so I'm gonna try not to go off too far here. I think, you know, I've had the luxury to live in several countries, and I find one thing that makes me a little sad in Canada in the way we talk about these things is that family being together is just not the priority that it is in a lot of other places that I've spent a good part of my life. And it makes me a bit sad, you know, like being able to have grandparents near their grandkids, or to watch them grow up, to be able to support and help your children as they, you know, are even in their adult ages is important. We should be able to do that and not just send them off to Nova Scotia, which seems to be like, we gotta go to Alberta then. That's sort of like the default, and I don't get it. I really don't, and I really hope that's not who we are. So I just had to add that. Regarding the cougar situation, we're getting into meat goats now, and so this is something that's making me ever so nervous. I think we're, luckily for ourselves, not in the worst place, but this is the way we're going to find out. I think, yeah, we really need to look at this situation. I don't know a ton about this in terms of ecology, but I do think that it might be nice if there is a way to get an ecologist to give us some information on why this is happening more this last couple of years than in previous years. I think that would be really interesting to know. I've worked with a lot of ecologists, so I know they're into this stuff. Yeah, I would really like to see something like that, because maybe there are other things we could be doing to mitigate this beforehand. I don't know what those are. I have no ideas. That's what the experts are for. But I would like to see something like that. And yeah, in the meantime, we need to be able to, everybody needs to be able to protect their flocks. This is a food security issue too, right? We all need to be able to have, as we found out in the last few years, we need to be able to have food sources near us, not just vegetables, but also meat. Hopefully everybody likes goat meat. I don't know. See how that goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to talk really fast to be in my 4 minutes, but I will try not to be significantly over. Kathy Atherton, 4995 Lombardy Road, presenting on behalf of Ron Aubrey. Good evening, Mayor Little and Council. I am speaking on behalf of Ron Aubrey, Chair of the Metchosin Parks and Trails Select Advisory Committee, to address the motion that was made on Monday, June 10th, at the Community Planning Committee meeting regarding the request for proposal for a survey of Duke Road East submitted by PTASC. The adopted motion that you would ratify tonight read that Council direct the CAO not to issue a request for proposal nor a contract for the survey of the Duke Road East Roadside Trail. During the discussion prior to the motion, my recollection is that all of the councillors expressed support for taking measures to make Duke Road East safer for non-vehicular traffic. Rather than turning down the request for the survey outright, they supported deferring the decision on the referendum for proposal pending the outcome of the active transportation consultations and completion of the updating of the Parks and Trails Master Plan. Those intentions are not reflected in the current motion. All the members of PTASC found this difficult to process, as after Council supported the concept when it was first advocated for back in June of 2023, there had already been considerable time and effort expended by PTASC to assess the need for a roadside trail. In November 2023, at the direction of Council, PTASC established a subcommittee to assess immediate and long-term value of a roadside trail, interest and support from neighbors and the broader community, technical feasibility, practicality, and initial budget considerations. The outcome of the assessment was included in the planning meeting agenda of March 11, 2024, and indicated, among other things, strong neighborhood interest exists in developing this trail. There is a broader community value in developing it, both in supporting active transportation and addressing existing traffic and pedestrian safety issues. A survey is required to confirm an optimal route and to help address any neighborhood or property owner concerns. Overall, trail development would be a multi-year endeavor and require ongoing neighborhood engagement. The final recommendation reads, the subcommittee believes that a roadside trail along Duke Road East is of strong local and community value and that this can be achieved through a multi-year phased approach. As such, the following is recommended. $10,000 towards survey of Duke Road East, and $10,000 towards the construction of Phase 1. This money has already been allocated for the 2024 budget. Based on the ongoing discussions PTAC has had since that time, we continue to support these recommendations. At our April 24th PTAS meeting, Beth Herford, a transportation planner with Urban Assistance, addressed us regarding the active transportation process. She was specifically asked whether proceeding with a tendered survey would be a problem in terms of receiving a grant afterwards, and she said no. In fact, she said, active transportation projects are required to be ready, as in all the surveying and planning is complete prior to the grants being issued. Therefore, PTAS submitted their request for proposal for a Duke Road East survey. Relying on CRD mapping programs was not considered an option because of the number of irregularly aligned road frontages, the complicated topography, and the lack of expertise on our committee to interpret and implement such data. We cannot have proper consultation without knowing the parameters of what is or is not feasible for developing a safe corridor for non-vehicular traffic along Duke Road East. We are excited at the prospect of being able to explore and implement needed traffic safety initiatives along the road, but cannot proceed to benefit from the active transportation grants without doing our homework first. Through comprehensive deliberation, PTASC has endeavored to justify proceeding with a survey of Duke Road East. While recognizing that we are indeed only an advisory body, we feel that our advice is in the best interest of the well-being of the residents of Metchosin. On behalf of PTASC, I would ask Council to either amend the motion or vote it down and pass a new one to allow the survey to proceed in a timely manner. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak this evening?
Hi, Erin Ronsi, Cactus Place, living with my family in Metchosin for 6 years and counting. Mayor, Council, CAO, fellow Metchosin residents and guests, I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm advocating tonight for collaborative problem solving, due process, and civility, neighborliness, if you will. As a community, we recently celebrated the anniversary of our Climate Action Plan, which asserts the vast majority of residents travel by car, and transportation is Metchosin's single largest source of carbon emissions. Encouraging and supporting residents to reduce transportation emissions is a significant challenge for Metchosin. It goes on to praise active transportation initiatives, better connectivity and options for walkers and bikers, increasing bus ridership, and more. In parallel, Metchosin has also recently won an active transportation planning grant. Congratulations. And has engaged a consulting team to help us develop a solid community plan. The Parks and Trails Committee is actively working to make recommendations, as you heard from Kathy, and give input that will help to develop greenways and other trails to connect Metchosin and cultivate its regional green space gem reputation, creating important environmental, health, and community benefits. Recently, Duke Road has been put forward as a candidate for a roadside trail. I have been among those neighbors studying its significance and feasibility. It's not the only of Metchosin's 132 named roads to be eligible for active transportation projects, but is among a select group of about a dozen roads that meets priority active transportation criteria. Some of those other roads already have complete roadside trails, some partial, and others have been investigated and considered too difficult for usual roadside trail treatment. In any case, if you have heard shocking or outlandish things about a Duke Road East trail, please don't be dismayed. The hyperbole is untrue. We can and must work together to solve problems, and partial truths are not helpful. I'm happy to chat with anyone about possible misinformation and share what facts and information I know as a friendly and open listener. Further, PTAS folks are your formal listening body, and I have experienced their regular welcome to meetings to learn, listen, voice concerns, and discuss opportunities. PTAS understands there are road safety problems to solve, and that pedestrians, bus riders, cyclists, people of all ages and abilities matter. So it is a step in due process to survey potential trails to show people on the ground in physical reality where we can put safe and friendly, non-car-centric transportation options in Metchosin. It was discussed in budget meetings this spring when Metchosin heard news about its active transportation grant that survey work should be carried out at all priority locations. Tonight, I request Council consider not just a survey for Duke Road East as soon as feasible, but for the handful of other locations that PTASC hasn't already had surveyed that qualifies active transportation priorities, so that we can move forward to support active transportation planning and meeting our climate action goals. Our imminent public conversations with active transportation consultants will be much more productive with this background survey information in hand. Fit it in with the existing budgeted amounts by creating cost and time efficiencies, by grouping like projects together, and using existing RFP recommendations from PTASC. In closing, let's work together, Metchosin. Let's deliver on our promises together. Let's cultivate our green reputation and maximize its value. Contradictions and conflicts can make us stronger if we will claim the truth and come up with shared solutions. Don't stop the current due diligence processes. Rather, expand and accelerate your efforts and invite all helpful folks to be engaged through fostering civility and collaboration. F. Scott Fitzgerald said, "The test of first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function." Move forward, move on. We can think big if we creatively problem solve together. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Kent Duclos and I live at 3746 Duke Road. I've also lived at 3770 Duke Road, which is just past Chapel Heights. So I have a sort of an interesting perspective of the traffic at both areas. So 3746 is just opposite Dutnall. And what we spend a lot of time in our yard, we have lots of animals and this sort of thing. And what the traffic that comes from the Albert Head is probably 4 to 6 times what it is in the other location. And the type of traffic that comes through are a lot of times large buses and big vehicles. And when you walk Duke Road, there is, there's very little room on the side of the road. There's one section just before you get to Haystock. There's like a foot on each side of the road. And with these large vehicles going down, it's just a disaster waiting to happen. So I would strongly urge the council and everybody to move forward with the path. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to comment?
Leslie Zayer on 525 Woody Beach Road. Since we're talking about roadside trails and traffic, for the last couple of years I've been monitoring the traffic on Woody Beach Road and the signs that we have, multiple signs. It seems to be about every 20 feet there's a new parking sign. And the comments from people who park in all the non-parking areas, because I'm out working in my garden, I don't think they see me half the time. And people will ask, gee, am I allowed to park here? And somebody inadvertently always says, well, the sign says whatever, but don't worry, Metchosin doesn't enforce anything. And I've heard that multiple times last summer and again on Father's Day and whatever. But I'm probably the only person who likes the wind because it keeps people away from the beach. But however, I've had to replace my fence in one spot on Woody Beach Road that has the yellow line. It has 2 signs that say no parking. They've got arrows pointing. We've had people peel off the arrows to park numerous times on both sides of the curve on that S turn down on Woody Beach Road. My fence, all the fence posts were busted the last 3 years. I left them there because they were leaning over the yellow area. Then I thought, we're a liability society now, so we fixed the fence because I didn't want somebody to, you know, injure their car or their child. But I think the reputation is there. And I have contacted Metchosin a few times about enforcing the parking signs. The big sign that you meet when you're at Still Meadow and down my lower end does say no parking over the yellow lines, blah, blah, blah. So, and it's just ignored, and everybody seems to know that. And I'm just wondering, since we have bylaw people or whatever, I watched the tow truck go down a couple of weekends ago and I thought, oh, nothing. Right, they went down. I phoned the tow truck company because the sign outside my primary driveway says property owner has the right to call West Shore Towing, yada, yada, yada. So I phoned them every year annually just to make a point, and they say, oh, we can't do any towing unless we get a hold of somebody on council. So I don't know who that is on Saturday and Sundays because I don't know who to call. So I haven't done my annual phone call yet. I usually wait until the end of June and all the little kids and their school parties are over with. But I just wonder, just either take the signs down, get rid of the yellow lines, or do something. Because it just seems we're getting that reputation. Same as different photography companies that go down and photograph certain indecent photographs. I heard that last year. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. This is, yeah, it's Metchosin Beach, but no one will get us down here. So I just think with the amount of population and different activities that people are now coming out our way to do, we need to make a stand for safety of our children, safety of our pedestrians going to the beach. And, I just think it's time we did something, either take it down and just ignore it, or something like that. But on a lighter note, my husband's car broke down a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it broke down right at that yellow spot. He managed to pull it over on the side of the road, and so far I've had 3 neighbors call and want to know what I was doing about that car that was parked there. I said, well, that's my husband's car, it's broke down, and our local mechanic who lives on the street is busy until July 4th, so we put a note on the window. But I did find that ironic that that's the spot that he would break down. And the neighbors all voiced concerns about, they've used that for years to pull over, because it's a 1-lane road down that way. It is not a passing road. There's a ditch on one side or a ravine on the other, and that spot is, in the busy times, is where people can sit at the top and let the cars come up the hill safely. People, in amongst people with children running up and down the road. So, anyways, thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more person, and then we have to move on with our meeting.
Hi, good evening. Darren Brown, Graceland. I'm extremely heartened and happy to hear very much, I think we're in adamant agreement that we need community consultation on the Duke Road and all other trails. I think there's been some really good ideas before that we've examined maybe the top 6 or more and not just jump to one solution, but that we look at it in a holistic manner. And so I'm very heartened to hear the feedback from the community that says, yes, we need community consultation. I don't think potentially that this is the forum to do that. Like I talked about before, maybe open houses or some sort of separate event where we would gather the community and discuss about these ideas and put forward our best plans and what our visions are and work together in a collaborative manner to come up with the right solution for Metchosin. So thank you everyone for your input and really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to page 5 of the agenda, to the adoption of minutes from the council meeting of June 3rd.
Move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Schupin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have the minutes. We have the receipt of minutes from the community planning meeting on page 11. Councillor Schupin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. I would move receipt of, there is one little error on page 13 of the minutes. It's at the very bottom bullet, and it says Parks and Trails Master Plan will not be a standing item on PTASK's agenda. That should be will now be a standing item on PTASK's agenda. And with that, I would move receipt of the community planning minutes for June 10th, 2024.
Okay, moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Gray, we have the Environment and Natural Areas Committee meeting of June 10th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then Councillor F, the Public Works and Protective Service Committee meeting of June 10th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor F, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a question. Item 5, we talked about, in the minutes, we talked about the fire hall feasibility study. And I know people will have looked at it probably since our last meeting, but I realized, one more peek at it, all the concerns we listed at our last meeting, but seismic issues aren't even raised in the RFP. So it's kind of like I thought we were, redoing the fire hall for reason of seismic, and yet we get this big RFP out without much there on the topic. And I'm also concerned, we heard from Mr. Payette, the CAO, last meeting that, look, the RFP is very, very broad, and because of that we probably won't even attract a single bid. And I thought, golly, do we really want to have an RFP out there that we think nobody will bid on? It's a bit embarrassing. I mean, I think we've got everything in there but the kitchen sink, and we're missing the seismic upgrading part of it. I just want to speak to that. We need a very organized approach, laser focused, and not, we've got issues with staff time and that. I'm worried that we're putting money in an ill-fated study and not looking very good to the community of people who may be applying for it, and whether or not we should just withdraw the RFP and get better organized.
Okay, so with regards to these minutes, and does anybody else have any comments? Okay, this is moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And on to my mayor's report. Very briefly, I'm very delighted that the District of Metchosin is raising the Pride flag again for the second consecutive year. This symbolizes that we're aligned with other communities throughout BC that are gathering to celebrate Pride 2024 this month. And in many ways our to SLGBTQ1A plus colleagues, friends, family members, neighbors make our district and province a better place to live. On June 21st at 1 p.m. we will join members of the Pride community in raising our Pride flag at the District of Metchosin. This is our commitment towards inclusivity, safety and tolerance, and an opportunity to raise awareness and to support each other's towards transformative change. So please join me and others of council on June 21st at 1 p.m. CAO Payette and I were waiting for a meeting with the fire last week when members of the Sienna Nation arrived with a gift for the fire chief and the first responder. They presented a carving and said thank you for the extraordinary care and services they received for one of their relatives. We're very fortunate to have such a dedicated fire chief and over 40 volunteer firefighters who work tirelessly to keep our community safe. As was recognized by the members of the Sienna First Nation, I would also like to thank the fire chief and her colleagues for their work in our community. And next we have Business Arising on page 23 of your council agenda. Councillor Shukin, this is Business Arising to be considered at this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Little. If somebody else wanted to put forward this motion for approval, that's great. I do not support this motion as it stands right now. If someone wants to advance it, they can. I have a potential amendment. However, I believe that so many of the comments that have been raised earlier today speak to the process that has gone on for months in terms of Duke Road East and the assessment that's been done, and now we see the need to move on to more detailed work. So I'm not going to make the motion to advance this right now.
Okay. Does anybody else want to speak to not forwarding this? Councillor Epp.
I would propose an amendment that instead of, it says not to issue, that postpone issuing to the present until we get the results of the active transportation plan.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray. Comments? Councillor Shuby.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I'm not going to vote in support of this motion. While I can see some of the sense of it, what, again, we've heard is the amount of time that has already been spent looking at this trail from a number of aspects. And the one thing I have to say is active transportation is a great phrase because it talks about all of the aspects you need for safe passage from non-vehicular travel. One of the things that to note is the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee has been in the active transportation business since it was formed. They have looked at this area of Duke Road East and see tremendous potential and would like to move on. And this is what this council in April basically endorsed in terms of granting the money to move ahead with a survey. We also did that after looking at the feasibility study that was presented to council in March. And again, as Ms. Atherton noted, there were several recommendations in terms of what we wanted to go forward with $20,000, 10 for the survey and then 10 for potential construction work. So again, council endorsed this to move ahead with this survey during the budget talk, and I would like us to move ahead. I'm not in favor of this particular amendment because it probably wouldn't allow us to move ahead for at least a year, given what is likely to be the pace of the active transportation survey. I have another amendment if this one doesn't succeed that we might explore as well. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to this? Councillor.
Well, it's just that I think we should have results of the plan before a year's time, hopefully. I do believe that it's, I sent a note today to the transportation experts at Urban Systems that are doing the transportation plan, and I asked them about the survey, about the importance of doing it before or later. His answer was the survey will be needed at some point if improvements are advanced along this road. It's a bit of a cart before the horse situation if the survey is initiated prior to the network plan being finalized, but not the worst idea if there is confidence this is a high priority project and a desire to start to make progress. So my concern is that it may very well be a high priority project, which is one of the things that the plan is going to help us look at, is which projects in Metchosin. I believe that once the plan is done, that we should look at surveying not just the Duke Road site, but all the other potential sites for roadside trails as identified by the Parks and Trails and by the active transportation plan. In the meantime, as far as safety goes, the Public Works crew is going to use a test area on Duke Road East of Mr. Sorry, the name is gone. Shanks, yes, suggested, which is the workable shoulder. I'm not exactly sure where the parameters of that will be, but we will be removing the center line and moving the white lines of the shoulders in, therefore reducing the size of the road, so traffic will slow down, as well as is coming up in a little bit, is reducing the speed to 40 kilometers an hour. The walkable shoulder will give a chance for cyclists, for mobile scooters, for baby joggers, or to have a hard surface to move on. That will be, obviously it's not, the ideal as it is to have a separate path, but it would be a safe way. And we can do that starting when we do the line painting probably pretty soon now. So anyway, that's what I sort of thought about that, and so, you know, I hope this will be supported, but we'll see.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you. When I spoke about this at the last meeting, I spoke with the idea that perhaps we haven't approached all of the residents that need to, that will be affected by this on that road, in the neighborhood or whatever. And so since then, I have talked to some other people that have been involved with roadside trail construction in our community. And for example, the Kangaroo Roadside Trail, and there was consultation with neighbors, and neighbors did learn that their fences were actually on the boulevard, and we have learned that even in the last term along William Head Road when there was a proposal there as well. The survey, which we have approved for in the budget, is to find out where we can or cannot put a roadside trail, a portion of it. And I don't know that the 20,000 is all the way up to the end, but for whatever we can. Right now, as Ms. Clark has mentioned, the very stationary sidewalk is there because of drainage in the past. And it just stops, it goes nowhere, and so therefore you do have a problem with a trail just stopping. Safe passage definitely is important. The Tower Point Park, now the grass area has been turned into a parking lot because there's more and more people, but it's to get them off the road because, again, neighbors spoke out, there was action taken. So what I was speaking at the last meeting about perhaps piggybacking with the consultant was to have more of the public engagement rather than doing, taking up more staff time and that sort of stuff. So, so I have learned that yes, there will be consultation as we go forth. I do think that the way this particular motion is written, I wouldn't support it. It wasn't the intent to abolish not doing this. It was more to have, from my perspective, to have consultation with that neighborhood, because it seems that there are people that either don't have enough information or are completely against it. It's unclear. So we have made a commitment in the budget for this. I would like to see it go forth. I'm not sure how it should be worded. As it's worded right now, I'm not sure that I can support it. I'd like to hear more from my colleagues on it.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
So I'm taking the motion as it's now been amended to say that we proceed with a consultation on all of the trails chosen, or the idea of the active transportation plan and all of that. So I think it might answer the question you brought up, Councillor Thompson, I don't know. From my perspective, it seems to me that we approved this in the budget with the idea that we'd proceed, but then other events took hold, including a signed petition, a lot of people on the road not satisfied that it should proceed. We suddenly became aware that, oh my gosh, there's a conflict here in terms of what's happening. The next thing that happened was that we got the approval of the active transportation plan work. And we learned through that we can get some ideas about the large picture of active transportation, as you're mentioning, Councillor Shukin. But it includes the question of roadside trails. And so we'd presumably get a list and be able to look at it. And I would go along with what's being described, which is get a look at all of the different trails, set the priorities, compare one to the other, and move forward from there. The idea isn't to crash or to shut down the Duke Road East Trail, but rather to set it up in a priority ranking. We got a lot going on in the council table. I mentioned a moment ago the RFP for the fire hall. We've got this Duke Road East Trail question. We've got a number of other challenging issues to look at, and it seems to me we need to be better organized to get things done. And I'm just concerned this is out of order in a way. I wanted to then address the question of cost because David Shanks asked about the numbers that I put out at a previous meeting. So what happened is that I was met up with a couple of people from Duke Road who have decades of experience in municipal staff at Colwood and then in the City of Victoria, combined decades of staff, decades of time at municipal level. And they talked to me about the trail and they said, we'll give you a number. It's something like $500,000 to $2 million. Who knows exactly until you get into it. I sent that information on let me see here, April 4th to yourself, Councillor Shukin, and to Ron Aubrey. Perhaps we could put it into an agenda so everyone would know about the concerns and that cost. I'm not saying it's the correct number, but I did get it from some people. I have no reason to disbelieve their perspective. And I hadn't heard Parapolkin had offered a number up about what the cost might be. Otherwise, the advice I received from the couple were that we could turn to the CRD map viewer at no cost at all and get a measure between the roadside and each property. And that would help us answer the question of whether or not there was room for a trail there. And that's the kind of thing done by other municipalities, apparently. There are issues with the phase 1 part, just in terms of drainage in that area, which I provided a note about. That we could look at other common measures, which we're doing now, I suppose. And then the biggest issue was the planning process that I wrote to you about. I wrote to the committee about some time back, saying, look, bringing people together and having a discussion about what we're doing would perhaps be the best way forward, especially given that we have the money for the active transportation plan. Thanks.
Okay. This trail has been recognized in the PTAS master plan since at least 2009. So it's not a surprise that this is being discussed. This has been discussed numerous times at the PTAS, at council, at the community planning, and at budget. We have money for this survey, not for other surveys. This is what we've been doing. The trail will provide safe passage in the community, and that has been a commitment of many members of this council table. The climate action plan that has been noted earlier tonight recognizes we need to get people out of cars to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is a good way of doing it, providing trails. We're committed to active transportation. We will be developing the active transportation plan. Having the survey done is not going to affect the active transportation plan. And I think it helps achieve a smaller part of our overall plan for active transportation, which we talked about before. We even got a grant. More so, it fosters community spirit. When you talk to Ron Aubrey, the chair of the PTASC, he says he's never seen a group more motivated to provide resources of their own for a project than this. And that spirit, I'm afraid, has been dampened. And overall, I think it's really disrespectful to PTASC. They've been going about making roadside trails and inner trails for years without a lot of oversight. And they do a good job. Harold Pelpolkin knows the provincial standards, and he won't propose anything that is not safe for the community, and he's willing to give up his time and energy. So I'm not willing to support the motion, but I think we should proceed with the Duke Road East Roadside Trail Survey. Anybody else wish to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
Mayor Little, Mayor Little, I do recognize that Councillor Hepp has proposed an amendment to the motion. Maybe I'm not going to support it, but I do have another amendment that might be considered, if possible. So.
Okay, well, let's call the question on Councillor Hepp's motion.
Just before we do that, I think I want to just mention, you're saying that we're disrespecting PTASC. I've got to counter that. PTASC has been doing some good work here, and we're having a discussion about it and wanting to be respectful of their advice. I think it would be disrespectful if we didn't tell them why, but we've laid out a number of reasons why this motion's on the table. So I just want to clarify, I don't think anybody at this table has disrespected PTASC. And I think it's unfortunate that that has been brought to the table. With regards to the climate action plan, the climate action plan was about getting other forms of transportation where we might. It didn't say we should build the Duke Road East Trail. So we're on track with the climate action plan, and whether or not we get a survey is a different issue.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the climate action plan says we need to get people out of vehicles. This is one way of doing it, is encouraging people to walk along the roads instead of taking their cars. Anybody else wish to speak to this motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Oh, pardon me.
Councillor Gray in favor. All those opposed? That opposed by Councillor Shukin and Donaldson. That motion is defeated.
Mayor Little, I would propose a further amendment to the motion. And it would read, tacking on to the end of the actual, the current motion. I'll just read the last part. Here, sorry, I'll read it.
You should read the whole thing.
Yeah, okay. That council direct the CAO not to issue a request for a proposal nor a contract for a survey of the Duke Road East Roadside Trail. Here's the amendment. Until after a public consultation meeting has taken place and residents have been advised of the survey through a letter from the district. So moved, and I can speak to that after.
This is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the nature of the original motion, again, I just will say I don't believe reflected anything of the discussion that we had last time. And essentially it was putting a heavy foot on the brake of a process that's been underway for since September of last year, and actually probably even earlier. One of the things that PTASC has talked about is doing consultation in light of this process. We've had lots of discussion, but I think there's room now to include maps, include some of the considerations in terms of where route alignment could be, and again, some of the deeper considerations that we've had. But to me, the big question now is to move to that next step in terms of the survey. Because what's essentially happened is PTASC has exhausted where it can go with what we have in place right now. We've spent a considerable amount of time looking at the tools available to us through the CRD Atlas, and there's only so far you can go with that. And there is a level of specificity we're talking about now. So whether we have 3 meters, 2 meters, or 1 meter on certain shoulders, that is what we're going to achieve in terms of getting a survey done. There are power lines, underground utilities, storm drains, power poles, bus stops, all of that along this way. Bus stops, I think there are 6 of them along the way. So we have to understand that in terms of road planning, and again, key thing, understanding the right of way. So those are some of the reasons why a survey now. In terms of the amendment, again, PTASC has indicated that we would have a public consultation process, a public consultation meeting. We've been talking about this for a long time. So I'm proposing that we advance the meeting, share further information, and then we also send a letter to the residents on Duke Road East to let them know what the survey is and what the survey isn't either. It is not an approval to go ahead with the actual trail building. We're just information gathering in a more specific sense. And yeah, again, I actually believe that this might even aid in the active transportation process, because it will be a test drive of some of the elements that we have to do in terms of advancing projects and potentially getting grant money to work with them. So that's, again, proposing this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson seconded the motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I think Councillor Shukin's pretty much captured what I was thinking.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Ab.
Yes, I won't be supporting this motion because I feel, first of all, it duplicates what the active transportation plan will be doing in the next 12, which is to have public consultation on the trails, and this all can be discussed at that time, as well as the maps and stuff. It can be part of that. And I believe that given some of the problems we have with staff time, I think asking staff to send letters to all the residents on Duke Road and asking them to organize another public information session is a bit over the top. I think that's why I won't be supporting it.
And Councillor Shukin, this would be a public consultation at a PTAS meeting?
That's ideally what I would propose. Okay. Yeah, Mayor Little. And I do recognize what Councillor Epp is saying. We would make sure that we minimize the burden on staff as much as possible. And again, having that through PTAS, I think, helps a great deal. Mm-hmm. So having the meeting through PTAS. Okay. So.
Anybody else wish to speak? Go ahead.
I just want to say there are lots of ways we can actually connect with neighbors without involving staff, and how I'm speaking, why I'm saying that is I did the 3 water talks in January, February, March, and this room was full of people just by putting things into the Muse. The marquee is out there to be used. There's all sorts of different ways of doing it. We do not have to burden our staff with more work. I do recognize that, they have sufficient stuff to do. And if we can do this at a PTAS meeting here in the chambers, I think that would be ideal too.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I think this is getting closer to the council motion that was made some time ago asking PTAS to get a look at the trail and come back to us about public consultation and what about the survey. The advice is coming to us piecemeal in a way. I think I picked it up in the minutes, and that was what brought me to say, hey, we don't want to proceed with the survey. We haven't done the consultation. It hasn't been reported back to council yet. Because PTAS was going to do that work, I'd understood, and come back to council with the results. But at this stage, as I say, other things have taken place, and we're going to expend about $75,000 on an active transportation plan. I think in order for that money to be well spent, we should keep the trail consultation within that process. And again, in order that we're looking at different priorities and laying them out. And it seems to me that what I'd be looking for is for the active transportation people who are paying to give us this advice on an expert basis. When do we do the survey? When do we start doing that for these different trail ideas? Where does it fit into the plan? Thank you.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the amendment? All opposed? Councillor Epp and Councillor Gray opposed. That motion carries. Can you carry on to the Lombard tree?
Sorry, I think we have to pass the main motion now. The end.
No, we don't. It wasn't on the table.
We're good? Okay.
I'm sorry, you called the question on the main motion.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Councillor.
So, sorry, Mayor Little, I just want to be clear that the full motion with my amendment has passed. I think that's correct. Okay, thank you very much. Great. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll just move to the next one, the Lombardy poplars. Before I do that, I did want to mention that there are a number of PTAS members in the audience, and I just want to recognize their attendance and ongoing support of the trails in the community. So thank you. Next, the Lombardy poplar trees on Lombard Drive. The motion is the council requests a staff report and further information on next steps in terms of addressing the issues with the Lombardy trees on Lombard Drive, timelines, and any policy, bylaw, and budget implications. So moved.
Okay, this is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed?
There's another part to this, Mayor Little, and it's that council requests the development of a communication and engagement plan to inform the community of the Lombard tree situation and get their input on the future of this area and the situation. So moved.
That's moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you. Moving on, page 25, Councillor Gray, we have business arising from the minutes to be considered at this meeting.
Yes, I want to make a motion that council ban the land application of biosolids in Metchosin. This motion started in MEASC and then was dealt with in the Environment and Natural Areas Committee, comes to council tonight.
Second.
This is moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Schuken. Wish to speak to that?
Sure, I'll just say Metchosin's at risk without a bylaw banning the application of biosolids. And the kind of chemicals we see in biosolids are the PFASs, the forever chemicals, heavy metals like lead, cadmium, arsenic, and mercury, PCBs, dioxins, PPAs, pharmaceuticals, and flame retardants, and chemicals of emerging concern, a longer list. So there's lots to be concerned about here, and I think if we pass this motion and move on to a bylaw, that we will help in protecting our lands, forests, and aquifers going forward. We've had indication of wide support in the community by the number of people who corresponded with council on the topic.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? None. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
On page 27.
I guess it's regarding the main entrance in the village square at the Metchosin School. I move that council refer the main entrance in village square at Metchosin School property proposal to staff for review and recommendations.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Schuken. Wish to speak to that, Councillor?
Well, we saw the proposal by the Newly Formed Society about contributing to an entrance at the village square school. So now it would be great if we could move it on to staff to just see how feasible that all is to get done and to look at the kind of costs involved and to come back to council with what they discover.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Gray.
I'll speak in favor of the motion. And just to say again, following up on some comments made by Councillor Epp at the last meeting, the benefit that we received from the volunteer commitment in this plan, which is kind of exciting.
Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? No one's opposed. Turning now to page 29, reports for action. This is regarding the District of Metchosin 2023 annual report. And I'm going to ask Ms. Hanson to come to the microphone, please.
Good evening, Council. Each year prior to June 30th, local governments are required to prepare an annual municipal report. The annual report must include the audited financial statements for the previous year, a list of permissive tax exemptions for the previous year, a report on municipal services and operations, a progress report respecting the previous year's objectives and measures, declarations of disqualification, if any, a statement of municipal objectives and measures used to determine progress respecting the objectives for the current and next year, and any information the council considers advisable. The District of Metchosin's draft 2023 annual report was introduced at the June 3rd council meeting. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to hold the annual meeting to receive input from the public on the report. I would like to acknowledge that the annual report is a compilation of write-ups from the various municipal departments, and I would like to thank staff and the fire chief and emergency program volunteers for their submissions. And that's it.
Okay, that's great. Does anybody have any, at the table, does anybody have any questions regarding the 2023 annual report for Ms. Hanson? Councillor Donaldson.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to commend you and staff for putting this together. It's a well constructed document. It's a very good reflection of, I know personally, things I have done, things I have not done, things I'm going to do. So it's a good plan for myself at least, and I think for our council in moving forward as well. So good in review and a good step forward for us. So I appreciate the work that's been put into this to bring it all together. Thank you.
Councillor Schuken.
I'm just, thank you, Ms. Hanson. I'm just going to echo Councillor Donaldson again. I think it's a wonderful report, super easy to read because it's written in chunks and it's opposed to big long text. So bravo, thank you so much, and to staff as well.
Okay, Councillor Parry.
Well, my thanks too for the report, Ms. Hampton, for all the work you put into it and everyone else. And I just want to emphasize on page 61, there was a total of 132 meetings held in 2023. That's a heck of a lot of work in your particular area in the administration, and very much appreciate all the effort that's gone in there. How many meetings total, including in-camera meetings, have we held?
Approximately 172.
172 meetings. That's an awful lot of agendas put together, a lot of minutes, a lot of effort. Thanks so much.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, just thank you. For me, it's an awesome report. So much work. It's so well laid out. And my husband loved the pictures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Go ahead.
So you can open up the public input portion of the annual meeting.
Okay. Okay. At this point, if anybody wants to speak to the annual report at the microphone, you're welcome to do so. Okay. Councillor Gray.
So we did hear a comment earlier from Mr. McPherson about accessibility, and that we're required under provincial legislation to deal with accessibility this year, but it's not listed. Is this a time when amendments are made to the annual report for that purpose?
We actually have moved on the accessibility plan. According to the regulations from the province, we needed to do at least two things. We needed to have to start the process, or three things actually. We needed to have an accessibility committee. We needed to have start an accessibility plan, and then have a portal for comments into the District of Metchosin on accessibility. The portal is completed. It's available for comments, and an accessibility committee. The West Shore Accessibility Committee has been established, and they're working on a plan. And so they're actively working. They're actively working together. What I suspect is going to happen, they'll come back with an overall plan, and each municipality or district will be responsible for their own accessibility issues that are in particular to that district or municipality.
Well, and I see that it's covered actually in terms of our 2023 highlights. And so I suppose without making a revision, we just know that work will be continuing in 2024.
Mm-hmm. It will be. Councillor Donaldson.
I was going to say the same.
Yeah.
I've been looking for it.
This will be an ongoing project, absolutely. And that portal will not be taken down. That will be a consistent thing. Go ahead, Councillor.
I'll move that council approve the District of Metchosin 2023 annual report.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any other comments? Okay, with thanks, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next we have on page 125, this is a report from staff from our Chief Administrative Officer. Councillor Epp, could you provide us with the motion?
I move we bring forward a recommendation for council consideration to reduce the speed limit on Duke Road from 50 kilometers an hour to 40 kilometers an hour.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. CAO Payette, did you want to speak to this?
Thanks, and through the chair, and thanks for people to wait for me to speak. Appreciate it. Not leave, that's awesome. So the Duke Road speed limit is not posted. Everyone probably already knows that. So by default it's 50. I had an opportunity to drive around with the RCMP traffic supervisor, and we had a good look at Duke Road. Clearly this is not the end all be all, but it's a great step towards making that road safer, statistically valid that lowering the speed limit does increase safety and reduce incidents. And so our bylaw allows the CAO to draft and sign an order to reduce speed limits in our district, and that's supported by the Transportation Act. So I'm bringing that forward for council's approval, and we would be implementing that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Question for our CEO.
Yeah.
Where it will come out in the budget? Is it I believe we had 25,000 in for safety. I don't know if that's where it's coming out of or if it's something else.
Yeah, we'll probably take that out of the operational budget for out of the public works. I'm not sure which line item, but we'll find a spot.
Okay. Just a moment. Councillor Epp, you have a question?
Just, well, I do, but I first also did want to say that I did ask the urban system consultant about the speed. He did say, said lowering the speed limit helps support the intent of the active transportation improvements and would be seen as a positive when advancing future projects and seeking grant funding, which is good. So my question was, why 40 and not 30?
Good question. So the discussion was currently drivers, and he had the radar thing on, which is interesting when you're doing a ride along. Pretty much beeps every time someone goes by, but people are driving 60, in some cases more on that road because it's not posted, and generally people understand that the police will not enforce unless you're doing like 55, 60 on a 50. So posting it at 40, then enforcement from RCMP can be between 45 and 50 speed. That's basically when they'll stop somebody. Posting it at 30, likely we will generate more complaints and appreciation. Interestingly enough, I did drive around a little bit more today, and Ryan caught me. Oh, he took off. Anyway, I saw Ryan out there looking around. There are some streets that are 30 in the little nooks and crannies. I didn't know that. We have actually got some streets at 30. And so myself and the corporate staff, we're going to update our bylaw to indicate the speed limits that are actually below 30 on the bylaw. So that's one of our tasks to get that cleaned up. It's a long answer, but
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just a question, do we have any duty to consult the neighborhood? I just don't know how it works and when you change speed limits.
No, we don't have any duty to consult on this issue.
No. And then if we do this tonight, which I'm supportive of doing, we're open to reviewing it, I suppose, and it's just as quick to change it back if it doesn't help. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. I suspect so, yes.
Yeah. And then the third question through you to Councillor Epp. This fits, I think, the idea of also creating that walkable shoulder. Great, thank you. And maybe I'll say thanks to David Shanks for having brought it forward most recently.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. The one thing that CAO Payette noted is that there are no speed signs there right now. So the fact that we will have signs up, I think is going to be a noted improvement. And it is interesting, we have 40 kilometers on Happy Valley Road in front of the village area, and you can sure tell when people aren't doing 40. I have to say, I think 40 is the right speed, not 30. So thanks very much, Councillor Epp, for bringing this forward, and Mr. Payette as well. So.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then we have reports for information. We have the staff report, the District of Metchosin 2023 Statement of Financial Information, the SOFI report on page 169. This is from the Deputy Corporate Officer to the Chief Administrative Officer. CAO Kayak. Did you want to speak to this item?
Give it a quick talk. Through the chair, the Sophie report is an annual event, as you know. It's due before June 30th of each year. It includes information on grants, remuneration and expenses, payments to suppliers for goods and services. It includes quite a bit of financial information. So that's all available in detail in the report. This is for receiving by council, as you noticed in the options. And the other comment is regarding insurance claims against the corporation. We have one currently for 2024, and it's involving a traffic incident, and they get mitigated and reviewed by MIA that we pay into, and that's why we pay our premiums. So,
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Donaldson, do you wish to move the recommendation on page 169?
Sure. I move that council receive the District of Metchosin 2023 Statement of Financial Information for information.
Yeah. Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Schuken. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous as well. Thank you. And next we have the Metchosin Building Inspection Department report of May 2024. This is on page 213 of the council agenda. I've seen this before. We've got some revenue coming in from building inspections. I'll take a motion to receive.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor F. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And next we have the District of Metchosin Public Communication Report Statistics on page 215.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have correspondence for information. On page 217, we have, for your information, motion passed at the City of Victoria. This is a letter from Mayor Marianne Alto, and this is regarding endorsing a private member bill, C-277, on the National Strategy on Brain Injuries Act. So that has been distributed, and this is for your information. Does anybody wish to make a motion to receive?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we have a message, or sorry, a letter from Mayor Kermit Dahl from the City of Campbell River. This is a letter to Minister Ralston regarding the forest practices in BC. They're not very happy about them with the closures of some of the pulp mills, or the pulp and paper mills in their area. I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And next we have bylaws. We've got the staff report, rezoning an OCP amendment to 4499 Leafield Road. This is on page 229 of your council agenda. This is from our planner, Catherine, and then also reviewed by our new planner. The date on this is June 11th. This is to introduce or to consider first, second reading of bylaw 698 and bylaw 699, appendix 1, to amend the zoning and the OCP designations for the property at 4499 Leafield Road, which would facilitate the creation of one additional parcel. Councillor Schuken, do you wish to start the discussion on this?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Little. I can start. For me, unfortunately, there is not much of a discussion on this one. When we consider this proposal to amend the OCP and to rezone this property, I stated my misgivings, and I still have them in terms of setting a precedent that I believe this one definitely does, and also the fact that it might be premature because of the fact we will be looking at our housing needs over this year, and we will potentially be making changes in 2025 to the OCP and to the land use bylaw. And until we have that information, I don't believe it's wise to proceed with this one. I say that with a heavy heart. I feel like sometimes the desire to keep Metchosin in terms of low development can be really abstract to those who are viewing it from a distance, where the issues are really deeply material to the applicants. So I feel for the applicants. There may be a different view around the table, but at this point, I'm not able to support this rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody wish to speak to this? Councillor Knapp.
I do support it. I probably wouldn't normally, but I support it because of the ambiguity of it being split zoned in our land use bylaw, while it is upland in the OCP. So I think that it's really unfortunate for the landowners. We did have a site visit there. It's the second property would have minimal impact. They've got a great site for the house. The driveway is mostly an old logging road, but it is because of the two zonings in the land use bylaw that I do support it this time, and I don't think it sets a precedent. We've looked at they have mentioned other properties in the past that are very unique, and it doesn't have to mean that everyone that comes along is passed. It's just that each of them is looked at individually.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm not going to support the rezoning request based on the planner's report, and that it doesn't comply with the official community plan. I agree with Councillor Shukin that if we want to change the rules, then we should consider changing the rules overall, but not break the rules for one application.
Good. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. Yes, this has been a really difficult one. The property on Kangaroo Road, I recall that, and I did have a good look at that and wondered how did that happen actually. It was only in like 2006 or 7, so not really that long ago. And there was only one small difference, and that is it's just a little bit bigger of a property, but it had an upland zone to it. It had a split zone on it, and the council of the day sought to go against what the OCP says, and they changed it. So again, as Councillor Epp says, it is a case by case. I have walked it as well. It's not as, I don't even know why there's uplands on it other than the small rocky outcropping compared to the other site visits we've done on, top of Neil Road as one good example. So I understand what my colleagues are saying about how the OCP is read. On the points that Councillor Epp has suggested, I would support this.
Okay. It is a hard question, and sometimes we're asked to make decisions we really don't want to make. I've gone back and forth on this one. You would think there was a precedent setting because many of their neighbors along that road have exactly what these proponents have. I don't think we're going to get a rush of applications if we approve this. Times are changing, and I think we're going to have to change with it. We've got pressures from the province regarding housing. This could be us doing something small towards housing. So with that, I've read the planner's report a number of times. I do note that there's many reasons, but I'm prepared to vote in favor of the motion. Councillor Gray.
I'll just say that I think this is probably one of the most important decisions we've faced as a council so far. A number of us made commitments in the election that we would uphold the OCP, and I don't think this is a time for equivocation on that. It's a sort of thing that a number of us were elected to deal with. It's difficult because of the desires of the applicants, and I feel for them. But I think that it's a real mistake. The notion that there was that rezoning on Kangaroo, and we've been told by the planner, apples and oranges, don't compare the two. So I don't take that as any kind of precedent. But I do see here how the applicants have said, see, there's precedents. We want to do it based on a precedent, and that's exactly what Councillor Schuch and I are being cautious about, is saying this will set a precedent. This is like the Langfordization of Metchosin in the sense, or we're going to do the Colwood routine. How do we want to do it? Just allowing people to rezone. They just put in an application and rezone with the argument that they would like another dwelling. Fair enough. An attractive request on that personal front, but I think on the community front, this is a disaster.
Okay, thank you. CAO Payette, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point of clarity, is that this is for first and second reading, not for approval. Thank you.
Okay.
And the advice from staff is not to do this, I take it. I think 8 times I read, don't do this in the document.
Okay.
Mayor Little, thank you. I just want to clarify what I mean about precedent. It's a word I don't like to throw out loosely. The one consideration I have when I say it, though, is we're at a very different time than we were back in the 80s when this area was created. There's so much more interest in housing and land. So that within that context, that's what I'm concerned about. So.
Okay. So.
Can I just make another point, which is that I'm just interested in the argument that you're making, Mayor Little, that because the province wants more housing, I think I heard, we should get with the times. The province actually told us not to put more housing in Metchosin. Specifically, we're going to turn a page in a minute and look at what they've asked us to do, which is look at secondary suites. So, as Councillor Schuchen said, again, there's the planning process is we're meant to do a housing needs survey, and then we'll come back according to the plan exactly as laid out by the province. Then we'll make changes to our OCP, and then maybe something happens then. But I'm just finding it remarkable that you use the argument that there's a need for housing to do this. It seems very different than what my understanding was of a prospective people around the table held around the official community plan. So it's to start changing it, even though we've not been asked to change it by anyone.
Okay. Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you. In line with what CAO Payette was saying, this is first and second reading, and probably a little public hearing, and then see what happens then. The other thing I wanted to bring forward too here, just on the tails of what Councillor Gray is saying, in the last 2 years we have approved secondary detached dwellings, a number of them. 2 of them I opposed myself, and they went through. So it's even though this one is only one dwelling, perhaps, we don't know. I mean, we hear we could put covenant on to not have detached dwellings, etc. That's more to come. Those are just parts of the presentation. But I just wanted to say we have already approved other dwellings, and so it's the only unique thing, or the only thing that's specific here is what Councillor Gray says. It is looking at an amendment to the OCP if we get that far. but reminding everybody here, we have increased, at least added 3 dwellings in variances.
All mistakes.
Okay. Councillor Epp,
I'm going to move option 1.
and that is that council, go ahead.
Yes.
We would have to read out the whole script.
Say, do you have to read?
Do you want me to do it, or do you want me to read it all?
Yeah, if you could do it.
Okay, hang on, everyone. Okay, I brought my glasses. Through the chair, that council introduce and give first reading to the official community plan amendment bylaw number 698. That council has considered the official community plan amendment bylaw number 698 in conjunction with the district's current financial plan and the CRD solid waste management plan. That council gives second reading to official community plan amendment bylaw number 698. That council introduce and give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 699 to rezone 4499 Leafield Road from upland to rural zones to rural and RR2 rural residential to zones. That council affirm that consultation carried out in relation to the official community plan amendment bylaw number 698 satisfies the requirement of section 475-2 of the Local Government Act, and further that a public hearing be scheduled for official community plan amendment bylaw number 698 and zoning amendment bylaw number 699, and in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act.
Okay.
Or the other ones.
Yeah. So that, so moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Epp, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I think I said no.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson? No. Councillor Parry?
I just want to clarify, Councillor Donaldson, a moment ago you were talking about the variances that have been approved by this council, increasing housing. Those variances are within the official community plan. Those variances are compatible with the bylaws. No bylaws were changed, no official community plan were changed. We were following the OCP. And within Metchosin, we're able to develop considerably more housing following our OCP. So this is, again, comparing apples and oranges to say, well, we approved a variance and now we'll approve as rezoning. They're just completely different questions. Didn't want to leave that alone without making that clarification. We've had we've had neighbor support obviously, but we've heard from quite a number of community voices warning us to be careful for the impact on the entire community. And others I'm sure have heard me talk about the camel's nose. Well, this is the camel's nose. And I'm afraid that we're heading down a very unfortunate path.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak, please? If not, I'll call a motion on that. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Schuppen and Gray opposed. That carries. Thank you. And then we've got the staff report, the land use bylaw amendment to implement provincial small-scale multi-unit housing, Bill 44 on page 279. This is, there's some recommendations here, 4 of them. Does anybody wish to speak to this? CAO Payette, did you want to introduce it?
Okay, thank you through the chair. So here we have a small segment of what we're being told to do by the province. So this is a fairly straightforward amendment, but the overall housing, bills, 3 bills, and all the work that has to be done in the regulations is a big elephant. So this is just one small bite. It's very straightforward, and it's been written by our planner and reviewed by our new planner. And I won't read the whole thing, but it addresses Bill 44, and it's amendment to our small-scale multi-unit housing, so our SHU. I just highlighted a couple of little points here to sort of introduce it. So the province has advised that creating a favorable regulatory environment for SMU to help overcome barriers will require an openness to new building forms in areas traditionally reserved for detached single-family and duplex homes. We do not have water and sewer, a lot of it, especially sewer. We have some water lines, but so some of the legislation doesn't pertain to us, as one of the councillors alluded to earlier. And the SMU policy is fairly comprehensive. It's all online. All the bills are online. It's anybody can go and read the details. So that covers that. Our planner is recommending the following amendments, or not recommending amendments. So the building height, we're recommending no changes. We already are at 8 meters height, so 2 stories. Parcel line setbacks, as one of the residents I believe annotated earlier, which was great. About the setbacks, so we're recommending that we move a little bit, but not the entire amount. So we're making some movement, but not giving away the farm, so to speak. So they're there. The maximum lot coverage, we're recommending no change at 20%. This is our current. And off-street parking, the province is recommending 1 lot, and I completely agree with comments about parking enforcement, but our staff do diligently try and enforce the parking issues in the summertime, and we'll keep working on it as much as we can all year round. And I think that's the highlights of the amendments recommended.
Great, thank you very much for your report. Councillor Shukin, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you to Mr. Payette for keeping us on track to meet our deadline of June 30th. And now, what I understand, we're exempt from the SMU regulations, and I think we have an obligation to write to the minister to let him know that. What I understand, though, with the other policy guidelines is all we have to do is merely give them consideration. We're not on the hook to adopting them. And I guess I'm just going to ask Mr. Payette if that's true. That is what I see in it's section 4813 subsection 7. Yeah. So
I can read out the direction if you want.
Sure.
It's kind of like look at it. I need my glasses.
I mean, I've got it. I've got the section from the Local Government Act here.
Yeah.
And it says in developing or adopting a zoning bylaw to permit the use and density required in this section to be permitted, and I believe that's related to alternative dwelling units. A local government must consider applicable guidelines, if any, under section, and it's referencing the policy guidelines section. So what I understand is we don't have to change. What we do have to do is consider. And I believe staff have actually brought that for us for our consideration right now. And I'm gonna speak against actually changing the lot lines in terms of front, like in terms of any of them. And again, sorry, Mr. Pyatt, thank you. Yeah. I'm going to speak against the proposals in terms of changes to the setbacks. Going again from the front yard is currently 15 meters. It would be proposed and reduced to 7.5 meters. The current setback side lot is 15 meters, and that would move to 3 meters. The same with the rear lot. Again, I believe at this time, until we get our housing needs assessment done and we understand what the need is ahead, and we have a bit of a way forward, I'm not in support of changing the setbacks at all. Again, not at this time. And again, I believe that we're under following the legislation by having this report brought to us by staff, but I don't think we're compelled to make these. I don't disagree that these are, sorry, wait a minute, I do disagree. A 3 meter setback from the side and rear seems to me to be, like that's a city setback, as opposed to what we consider rural. And the one thing that's interesting is if you have a variance that comes to you where you're trying to reduce the side or rear or front setback, you get a chance to hear from neighbors about the potential impacts. And with this, if we move to change, that becomes the requirement. And if people go to put an alternative dwelling unit, detached secondary suite that is, and they're within that 3 meters, there's no variance needed. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I was under the impression that the planner was recommending that we do more than consideration, that we do adopt these recommendations. Perhaps we can get clarification from the CAO Pyatt regarding whether we need to consider them or we need to actually make some action here.
Okay, thanks through the chair. Clarification on this will be interesting because it's not overly clear, but I do want to read out what the regulatory comments are so that it's on the record, and it's up to council ultimately because they are recommendations, but I will read out the script and council can debate. So this is in writing. Sorry, I have to read this. It's not in the report. Given the depth of the housing crisis and the provincial-wide goal of creating more homes faster, local governments are required to put in place zoning bylaws that enable SHMU and do not impede the creation of SHMU, which is what we secondary suites.
SHMU something else.
Are SMUH,
Yeah, that's
multi-unit housing. Okay?
Yeah.
Secondary suite, multi-unit housing.
No, small scale, multi-unit housing.
Small scale, small unit housing.
Which I think we're exempt from.
Okay, good. Well, then maybe that clears it up. So, right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have to read the rest then. Perfect. Perfect.
Councillor Donaldson.
I think Councillor Shukin has it figured out. I think we are exempt, and like Councillor Shukin, I would not support these setbacks either. This is definitely urban lots. I'm reminded of neighbors, actually in the Albert Head area, a number of years ago, of a neighbor who had a person put in a heat pump next to a garage. Of course, the principal dwelling's on the other side of the garage, people couldn't hear it, but the neighbor could. It got so bad and came to council so many times, the person actually moved to my neighborhood, not my particular street, but where it was much quieter because the setbacks were abided by. 10 feet away from a property line is not very much. I can understand that for, in Colwood or Langford, but not in a community that has rural acreages. The same thing with the parking. I just actually was reviewing and wrote an article in the Muse twice now to do with roadside stands, but to have parking off of the street, off of the boulevards, and if you have a suite, you must provide parking for it. There should be sufficient parking for your roadside stand, your suite. We have suites in our neighborhood. We have one house actually, it has renters upstairs and downstairs, and 5 vehicles on our street because they will not park in their driveway. And it's become quite littered because they are construction workers and they dump all their stuff and stuff. So it does create a problem, as was cited earlier, the area across from Westmont too. So we have acreages, we have space. If we're going to create housing on our acreages, we need to provide the space, and I think that we do have that on most of our properties here. So this doesn't really apply to us, so it may be a consideration, but we are exempt.
Councillor Eck.
Yeah, just reading over this. Like what it says here is that we're exempt from the 3 or 4 dwellings on a piece of property, but it does say in bold under discussion, like as it says, the minimum residential density is already enabled in the Metchosin land use bylaw because we do allow suites. But it does also say there are amendments in the provincial policy manual and site standards for the SSMUH that must be considered in relation to suites. So I think that covers the setbacks and stuff. So I think we can't just ignore this. I don't think.
Through the chair, maybe Mr. Pike could read the entire piece that you have there.
All right.
It's on page 280.
I'm getting there, everyone. Okay. Through the chair. Given the depth of the housing crisis and the provincial-wide goal of creating more homes faster, local governments are required to put in place zoning bylaws that enable SSMUH and do not impede the creation of SSMUH. Local governments must not use other authorities in parts 14 and 15 of the Local Government Act 9 to unreasonably restrict or prohibit SSMUH projects. This part of the manual identifies factors local governments must consider when updating their zoning bylaws to be compliant with the requirements and sets provincial expectations for compliance. It identifies recommended approaches based on best practices and the experiences of jurisdictions that have already implemented similar policy frameworks. It also identifies common zoning bylaw provisions that are not aligned with SSMUH objectives and alternative approaches that can be used.
Clear.
Okay. So since this is in bold here, I agree with Councillor Epps' reading of this report from our planner and then seconded by our second planner. Anybody else wish to speak to this? It is a little bit fuzzy, but we need to have this done by June 30th. We need to have this considered. Councillor Ashton.
So, thank you very little. The one analogy or analog that I can remember in terms of consider is the requirement to have a code of conduct. So this came to us last year, and I think by a certain date we had to have considered a code of conduct, and the word consider was there. And here we have must consider. So, which is what we're doing right now, and again, with the report. So I'm of the mind that we're not compelled to make a change right now, but again, I think we have to keep this in mind as we advance. The one thing I would suggest we do is that we inform government that we're continuing to look at this, that we have had a secondary suite policy in place for a long time, that we've granted variances when those were merited, and we are continuing to assess our housing needs throughout the year. So I think there's a danger that we don't meet the deadline, but I'm again, the legislation itself, the wording from section 4813 subsection 7, again, says consider the applicable guidelines. It doesn't say adopt the applicable guidelines. So again, my suggestion would be send a letter to the minister, reference the secondary suite policy and the fact, of course, that we're exempt from the SMOOs. But again, we've addressed housing through secondary suite policy and variances, and that I think will meet our timeline. That's my sense of things. And we can come back to look at this at a later date when we have more information about housing needs. So, and again, I say this, I'm a little concerned that if we enshrine this in the local government, our land use bylaw, we will potentially have this conflict between neighbors, because potentially secondary suites can be bumped up much closer to lot lines than they had previously been. So just as one example, if you're 15 meters away and all of a sudden you're 3, that's an 80% reduction. So thank you.
It does seem like the guidelines were set for a more rural or more urban environment and urban consideration. Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I think also they were probably set for communities who had not had the forethought that we have, we have the secondary suites, we have them for a long time. And in your initial letter to Mr. Callum, that set the stage for us, kept the door open. We have accomplished that, and I respect what the planners put here in bold. Must be considered in relation to the suite. So, yeah, I think that we are keeping an open mind about it, and I think that CAO has a letter drafted here as well, ready to go, I believe. I think we're in good shape.
Okay, Councillor Shukin, the housing needs assessment, that's to happen, remind us of the date when we're going to be considering that.
Well, I recall that it has to be done by the end of this year, based on information that we're going to get from the province. I've seen little glimpses at what they ask you for, and it's pretty rigorous and in depth. Like, there's not a lot of room to maneuver, as I understand it. So we'll get that by the end of the year. Our planner has actually been booked for 2 days a week, I think, through 2024, and then we have to act on it by the end of 2025 in terms of both OCP amendments and land use bylaw.
So what you're recommending is that council recommend number 1, number 2, and number 4?
Sorry, on what page?
Sorry, page 279. So that's to receive the report on the land use amendments to implement the provincial small-scale unit housing bill 44, confirm that the policy manual and the site standards for small-scale housing has been considered as outlined in the report, and direct staff to provide written notice to the Minister of Housing of the SSMUH exemptions applicable to the District of Metchosin by June 30th.
That's exactly what I'm proposing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you like to move that? 1, 2, and 4?
Yeah, I would. So moved.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion? Councillor Gray.
I'm in accord with the motion and will vote in favor. I just thought in terms of consideration, I might offer my reasoning, which I think others have already mentioned, but one is that we're in a rural area, and these measures seem unnecessary in terms of promoting people building secondary suites. We have a pretty good regime in place at the moment, and if people run up against a problem, they can come to us and seek a variance under our bylaw, and that's not been, I don't think, a particularly onerous situation. And I think that the question of neighbor issues is important, again, different in the city, or different in a rural area as compared to the city. So those would be the reasons why I would suggest we stick with where we are today.
Okay, sounds like we're all talking about the same thing then. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Other business, we don't have time for question period, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, and to receive the information that we received in for item number NC, I think it was, the correspondence from Bev Bacon and Kathleen McPherson. Okay, motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.